horrific events. Some of them were full of images that sometimes still seem like they are seared to the back of my eyelids. Some of the words, some of the phrases still rattle around in my head like a misfired .22 shell. Spinning, spinning. It's constantly trying to make my tiny little brain into mush. And it's part of what happens. When I commissioned in 2006, I stayed enlisted for 3 years. Commissioned in 2006 as a second lieutenant, Signal Corps branch, thinking, hey, computers, that's a good soft skill. I thought about armor, but I didn't see the whole lot of the civilian skill set transferring if I could drive a 60-ton vehicle. I could crush your house with it. But unless I was going into demolition, it didn't really seem useful versus computers. So I chose the Signal Corps, where we got to learn about computers and networking, so on and so forth. And we moved forward with that. And one of our missions was to stand up a communications infrastructure at FOBAD, or Fulino, right outside the city of Al Nasiriyah. I was with a straight signal company. It had been stripped down from the very beginning, with some signalers having to go here, some there. By the time we had actually gotten down there, I can't remember quite the number, but I think it was either high 20s or low 30s was our main body. That's all we had for all the work to be done. And some of it we had to get creative. Some of it we had to get inventive. We had to push rolls of fiber optic cable up and down the runways, hoping the Air Force wouldn't notice, or at least land on us, so we could get it buried in the ground. I ended up having to use my skill set as a construction person to go into underground vaults and run this wire. I didn't have other people that were trained in closed confined space entry, so I started applying some of the blue-collar skills. I ended up having to mentor and teach my young signaleers how to use a shovel, because when I watched them, it actually hurt my feelings. And I could tell that their hands were kind of soft. They probably hadn't been calloused, except for maybe by their Xbox or PSP controller. And that for the first time, they were going to get equal pay for equal sweat. And it was an opportunity to be there for them and to be out there with them. Not just to direct because I was the officer, but to participate because I had to be the mentor. And I took that role. So I got to be a platoon leader. I got to be an XO, an interim. I got to be a project manager. When I moved on to my next tour, and it was convoy escort missions, in the aiding of the withdrawal of Iraq, we put gun trucks on the road to protect all the other vehicles as we withdrew our equipment and personnel out of Iraq. So I had a couple of opportunities. One of them was to go out on an IED SNF team in the engineer group and do route clearance. I did it because they needed a commo officer interim to see if the radios were working and grounded correctly, so I got to ride along and go kick rocks. If it blew up, that was a bad day. If it didn't blow up, that was a good day. If we got to make it blow up, that was the most excellent day. During the convoy escort mission, I got moved up to a staff officer, a senior level officer. I was still a junior officer at the time, still am. And I was the most senior officer on the battalion team, led by a lieutenant colonel. And I was their S6, which is their commo department head, so their officer in charge of the OIC. It was my job to provide comms for over 600 plus troops in their vehicles, both with internet, both with telephone, radio comms, all the way back up from our headquarters talk to the birds. So that if something were catastrophic to happen, they would have a way to reach back home and call for help. That was my charge. And I had to learn how to manage resources, manage those personnel, manage the money. How many extra computers could I actually buy and push the battalion and have them buy off on? And so my skill set grew. And so when you look at me in civilian clothes, you don't necessarily see that. If I'm wearing my OIF veteran's hat, you might see veteran. And I'm sure that there are going to be some pictures to that. But what I'm finding out as I go back to school is that there's been some barriers that have happened now as a returning vet. And one of them was when I came back home, I was disjointed. I did not have a good outlook on life. I was full of anger. I was full of hate. And again, I went and stepped back to my old ways and tried to drown them in a bottle. It didn't work out well. The resulting end state of that was that I ended up in the VA's 1K lockdown facility. And I had this moment of epiphany. I use epiphany as tongue-in-cheek because as I had this moment, I had a strange man looking into my butt with a flashlight, and he didn't even buy me dinner. And I'm thinking, this is a bad place to be. Just when I thought I could be stripped down of all of my humanity, no, there was one more step. And I didn't know if I should open up my mouth because I was afraid the light might shine through. Because I had felt that transparent at that moment, that broken. And I went through a program called PPH, the pre-psychiatric hospitalization program. I went through that with a team of folks to help me start piecing back together my life. The one that continued to go without me. The one where my kids grew from 1 to 4. My boy went from 6 to 9, and I missed those years. My wife and I became more disconnected. My friends and colleagues that I had been so accustomed to seeing were gone. We had all been returned home to our own home and our own lives. The old friends that I had left behind before tour were around, but I couldn't relate. I had to find a new rationalization and a new relationship to find out what was happening. And all of these things ended up being a culminating amount of barriers. Barriers not only transitioning, but barriers to education. As I kept dragging my feet thinking, I'm not the same age, too old. I've seen too many bad things. I hate people way too much. I hate life way too much. Why did I even come back home? Why couldn't I have been killed in country? And those questions kept rattling around as I made this slow transition. And even today, as I stand here in front of you, I continue to make that transition right before your eyes. As I learn how to acclimate to a new subculture of academia, in pursuit of, as you are all doing, a higher education. But my higher education now entails two parts. It entails a very steep theory that I took many years ago, from 93 to 98. And now it also entails an experiential piece that I've gotten now from 2003 to present. And that's that hands-on piece. It's that hands-on piece that becomes increasingly more valuable as you begin to understand how to weigh it and leverage it with the theory that you've already learned. So today I want to offer you two challenges. And those challenges are this. When I talk to my troops about choices, and as all of you, as the future fabric, and the past fabric, but still future fabric of this great nation, go forth and do great things. You will all have to make choices. And I truly believe that choices are neither good nor bad. We look at the outcome of the choices, we weigh them against the value system, and we kind of base it whether then it was a good or bad choice. So my first challenge is this. Let's do it in reverse order. Let's go ahead and take a look at the outcome before we make the choice. And see if that gives us a little bit more of a guiding light, a little bit more of a presence of self, a little bit more of that theory and practical, that critical and that creative thinking combination. So that's the first challenge. The next challenge is this. And that is to see that a coin flip is not just heads or tails. There's three sides to it, believe it or not. There's a head, there's a tail, and we all are familiar with those. But there's also that really, really odd freak chance that it lands on its side and stays there, and is neither heads nor tails. So as we make those choices that seem so apparently black and white, let us be cognizantly aware of that gray area, that chance that coin lands on its side, and that we always account for it. And as we go through the rest of this day, that's Veterans Day, we take a look at those soldiers, those servicemen and women throughout all branches, who at some point in time in their life made a choice. They made a choice to attempt to serve. Not all people get a chance to serve. It's an opportunity. You go through a filtering system. But they have served. And I can guarantee two things. They don't want money and they don't want parades. That's number one. The second thing I can guarantee is they do appreciate a day like this, a day of reverence, a day to say thanks. And with that, they also appreciate looking at all of you, because when they're overseas, when they're over there fighting, sometimes they just want to be reminded of what they're actually over there for. The 1.4%, shoulder up that for the other 98.6, which we'll hopefully never have to. So as you move forward through the day, I leave you with this. My old battalion's phrase, et avant, ever onward. Thank you.
Thank you. That was really an inspiring talk, and we really appreciate you coming here to our campus today to give us some words of wisdom. So we just have a short little video. You feel free to take off, go back to class, or watch the video, but our program has concluded. Thank you so much, and happy Veterans Day.